Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the session. We have Ryan ready for an on-time start at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. The last session is just ending, so we're going to be about 3 or 4 minutes and let people populate into this room. We appreciate you joining the session. Just sit tight and we'll be with you momentarily. Thanks so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining the session. Our speaker, Ryan, is in the room. We are ready for an on-time start at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So we'll get started in about 2 minutes or so. Sit tight, and we will be back to you shortly. Thank you for joining the session with us. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining the session with us, and we want to thank everybody who joins these sessions. Keep your feedback and commentary coming to us. It makes us better and better. Uh, Ryan is going to be presenting for about 30 minutes. If we have some time, we will answer a couple of questions. So there is a chat box. If this is the first time you're watching us, please send over in the live chat any questions you have, any issues, etc. And time permitting, when he's finished, if we do have a few minutes, we'll answer a couple of live questions. But with that said, it's my great pleasure to introduce and bring back Ryan Wilday, who has over 2 decades of experience trading equities, futures, and options. Ryan began trading cryptocurrencies in 2013, and today he melds his deep knowledge of the cryptocurrency market with Elliott Wave theory. Back in August 2017, Ryan launched his cryptocurrency trading service on ElliottWaveTrader.net. Ryan, it's great to have you back, my friend. The floor is now yours.
All right, thank you. I think I've got 7 years now at the Money Show too, so I'm tacking it on.
You're a veteran. We
Yeah.
appreciate you for that.
All right, thanks everyone. Yeah, good evening or good afternoon, depending on when you're where you're coming in from. So did Bitcoin form a cyclical top? That's the question today. This melds nicely if you saw my last presentation with the money show where I think I called it something like Bitcoin's last leg, and so I was tracking the potential of the push to a final high. I'll give you the quick answer. It seems probable to me, but I always need a lot of evidence before I say, okay, the top is in. I've talked about that several times through the money show. It's, I use top targets to, determine risk levels, and you start to reduce risk. But until you have a lot more confirmation out of a market, and I'll talk about what that confirmation looks like, you can't get too rigid about whether the top end is in or not. As always, if you want to, if you like what I have to say and you want to check out the service itself, you can use the QR code on the left. And then if you want to copy this presentation, you can use the QR on the right. I'm going to spend about 5 seconds here because just for everyone to get their cameras. If you're too slow on that, I totally understand. You can also use the email ahead or above. And I'll go back here for Q&A so that I should get through the presentation in time for Q&A, and I'll head back to the slide so you can take a shot. So I'll give it a couple more seconds. 1,000, 1,000, we'll move on. I'll be back here. I think, but my intro was good. Here are some of the calls. I don't want to belabor through all of them. Some of the calls I made over the years. You could see the last one starting to look for 125K Bitcoin to finish the top. I can finally check this one off, if we consider 124,400, which is our recent high, close enough. I do. But since I made this back when Bitcoin was closer to, I don't know, something like 10,000 or so. Disclaimers. I think the main thing here is that this is not financial advice, not trading advice. This is analysis. Also, while I am very much a proponent of cryptocurrency, it doesn't mean that it's right for every single person that is watching this presentation. So do your own research. Again, all the calls I made did not mean that I make all the same level of great calls in the future. That's not how this works. So take none of this to be an endorsement of a product, service, exchange, or even trading Bitcoin. I sure do myself. So I'll leave it at that. All of my work is based on, well, I shouldn't say all of my work. A lot of my work is based on the Elliott wave theory, particularly the long range targeting. That is a theory that's, I think we're approaching 100 years old for this theory. And it says a markets move in 5-wave trends with 3-wave corrections. But more importantly, they have a lot of mathematical relationships of each wave to another. And that's how we derive support levels from which you might trade, or target levels that I'm giving to you today. So I'm not going to teach how to do Elliott wave, but just so you know the background where it comes from. So our goals, I want to warn you about a potential incoming bear market in Bitcoin. This is kind of the same goals we had in the last presentation. And I also want to explain where my view will change, because again, every analysis needs a point where you change your view. You wouldn't want to follow analysis that or an analyst that is rigid in their mindset, at least in my view, but has clear levels from which to change their mind. And then with that, those are clear levels that you can trade from. There's a lot of current narratives in the Bitcoin market, as tops and bottoms form. We get a lot of narratives in markets. Talk about that. They're the same ones I spoke about in the last presentation, but have a little interesting slide that I wanted to add to it. Some key levels to watch closely as Bitcoin nears potential top. Actually, I should have changed that sentence as this potential top develops. We have a few key levels we need to watch. I just want to remind, this is often, I would say the biggest thing people say about how markets top when there's an overwhelming amount of selling. And it's actually more true that markets top when there's the immense buying as everyone's piling in. Eventually, you get everyone that will buy has bought. And open auction markets in their simplest form are bid and ask, and they have to come down to the place where the market or the bid is. And when everyone gets in, the bid kind of drops out. So that's the first stage to a market topping. And the market makers are part of that action, trying to find a bid in the market, and they'll bring it down. Eventually, you get to a point where margin levels start to break, and all of that feedback loop ensues. Then you get the selling. So if you look across any market top, well, I shouldn't say any. You may find exceptions, but you'll see that they top on a lot of buying volume. Okay. And I would say this volume has been a little tepid, so I don't have much of that signal. But why I'm using this slide is typically the narrative is the opposite, right? That as long as there are buyers out there, people buying, aggressive buying, all of that, this market will go on for, some people say, infinity. I've heard that before. So be cautious of that narrative. And there's this, I think this quote, and I think that there's no one you can attribute this to. I say unknown, but there's just some form of this has been said. I mean, Buffett has said, buy when others are fearful and sell when others are greedy. But markets bottom when the news is the worst, and they top when the news is the best. Okay, and I bring that up because we've got these are the kind of the myths that are running today. We have number one, a pro crypto administration takes the shackles off Bitcoin prices. I would reframe that as this administration has taken the shackles off Bitcoin or crypto companies. But if actually you look at price action, I mean, I thought it was quite humorous that the last intermediate top before the final top that we've seen this year was right on Trump's inauguration. And I'm not trying to be political in my statement. I just think there is kind of a sense of humor in markets. And, that was a night where there was, immense buying as people were excited about this inauguration. But then quickly all of it was erased and it was down over the weeks after the inauguration. It's just sort of hilarious. And then the next one, I think what's actually more fervent these days is that there's a take up in supply by treasury companies and sovereign wealth funds, and that will perpetuate Bitcoin's rise. We haven't seen the sovereign wealth funds spoken about that much, but we've seen proliferation of these treasury companies, and not only in Bitcoin, but in Ether and WorldCoin. If anyone's heard of WorldCoin, is another one. There's a treasury company involved in that, and it was just bought by one of the Ether companies. So it's getting a little nuts out there. And I'll be really honest. You look at some of the balance sheets, or you look at the operational value of these companies, or the product cycles and all of that. Some of these companies are zombie companies that are trying to save themselves via this strategy of owning a bunch of crypto and hoping that they can fight inflation and increase their enterprise value in US dollars by that method without really an active operation, product strategy, and all of that. I mean, maybe one day they just become ETFs, but right now they're a far cry from that. So I don't know. It's I'm going to call it a sketchy strategy on its own, but we'll see. I'm going to go take you back through some of my old presentations and just, I hope that I'm not trying necessarily to boast about previous calls, but I would, it's really meant to get you confident in this approach to analysis is really what it's all about. And because, and there's analysis techniques and there's fallible humans. I am one of those, and I'm not neither a perfect analyst. But by means of this tool, Elliott Wave Theory, we've been able to get to a pretty good place in each of these big swings in Bitcoin. And so this was a slide I presented, and all of these are presented in Money Show. So July 2023, as Bitcoin was trying, this is a time when we had the FTX collapse. We had some of the banking collapses that were involved in crypto, like Silicon Valley Bank. And Bitcoin was at 15,500, and I had presented this slide. It was at 15,500 in that January, but I had presented this slide looking for a breakout higher and the start of this move. You can see right about where that 5 is, right around 125K. And certainly that it actually seems like I had it in the right spot time-wise, although I'm usually off in that. As we went forward, I presented this slide that was looking, again, you could see that 125K target. I can't say that the micro played out exactly like this. Actually, it's quite a bit off, and micros always have to adapt as we go. And when I say micro, I mean the waves that are happening between here and 125. But overall direction and vector of the market since that obviously was right on. And these yellow boxes that I put, so blue, I have color codes where I have red resistance, blue support, which is where we tend to take our long trades. And then if I flash a blue box on a chart, and then yellows are these targets. And that yellow box has been sitting on my micro charts or swing charts since 2021. And then this is the last presentation I made. And again, I can't say the micro was exactly like this, although somewhat close. And in fact, we briefly breached the first support that I called out, just really briefly at 114. But it turned around fairly quickly. We didn't get a sustained break, as I always say that a sustained break is a break. Sometimes you get a brief break of the level and a spike back up, and that's exactly what we saw. And then you can see where it's actually right now it looks like we have taken the blue path micro-wise, and we're not likely to see these the rest of this extension, but we'll see. There's a lot more action to come. So I had called out the 108K bear warning level. That was the first level that I was looking for to break. That has not broken yet. So we've come up, hit 125. However, what I would have expected for us to continue on to a little bit of an extension to 140 was for us to come down and not revisit this level 114 and certainly not break it, and that has happened. So that was the first warning that this bear market or this bull market has ended. It's very early. I didn't indicate it. Well, I indicated in this, but it became more important once it was tested and we pushed forward. And now that it's broken after that test and after hitting a key target, that's where that support level now becomes sort of an early bull bear pivot, from a cyclical standpoint. But not good enough. We got a 108K below, and then event in my, again, as I stated in that last presentation, if you saw it, 74,500 is my cyclical bear pivot. I mean, confirmation. Confirmation is never certainty, but I would not expect Bitcoin to come back to this level, this 125 level, or anything anywhere over 100K anytime soon once that 74,500 cyclical level is broken. It will one day, but I now must call this move lower a substantial bear market. There is one point that I've heard over the last few years, and I think this is important to illustrate. I've been challenged on why would I need the market to break 120, 74,500 after it's 125K, which is well over, I think it's roughly a 30% drop in prices, where when we talk about bear markets and stock market, we talk about 10% levels or 15% levels for a bull market to ensue. And what I'm doing is actually tracking a high degree bear market that retraces much of the last 7 years of action. If we look at the move simply from 2023 low to this high that we've seen recently, which was a couple of years, we went, it was something like 6x. And I look back on the stock market, and that's like 20 years in percentile basis, something like 20 years in stock market action. I mean, Bitcoin has always, since it's been on the scene, has sort of double time, triple time the volatility of the stock market. And so this would be like, I don't know where Avi, our founder, is in terms of the same degree, but it would be a massive break in the S&P 500, retracing many, many years of action, which Bitcoin simply would be doing. 74,500 for Bitcoin is really just a breath. It could be there tomorrow if it wanted to make one of its $10,000, $20,000 moves on a percentile basis, which it has done in the same similar percentile basis in prior cycles, prior bear markets. It can go there suddenly. And so it's just less dramatic of a move in Bitcoin simply because of the sheer volatility that this asset moves on, and it's even tame compared to a lot of cryptos. So that's the why. And if you have any more questions about that, feel free to throw that at me. But yeah, we're dealing with just simply a different scale and different time frame and a different level of volatility from other markets. Now I'm bringing us to today, and so we've hit. So we can see my yellow box here, and it's like on this chart, it's sort of almost laughable that we missed by that little. And even if Elliott Wave perspective, we can simply be off that much by a data set, especially in crypto where the data set varies by exchange. We don't have a central quote in crypto. We probably never will have a central quote in crypto like we do in the stock market. So I've got it marked as a potential cyclical top. I haven't dropped off my 140 potentials. I'll say very quickly that below, I almost want to write it off at 108, although I simply can't until it breaks 74,500. But I've already speaking to my subscribers, like, I consider 140 low probability, but until something really breaks 108, I'm not going to take it off my chart quite yet. Am I trading for it? No. I've de-risked a lot of my Bitcoin holdings, except for what I call my never sell Bitcoin which belongs, high security cold wallets. I've talked about that before of the money show that I just leave in there. And, I want to get comfortable with that drawing down. And so I've taken off most of my swing position. I've started adding like puts and IBIT and stuff like that to start to hedge, sort of my net worth, so to speak, since I have that cold wallet and whatnot. But overall, mainly I've de-risked versus starting to short this market. So I want to be very clear in that, in terms of a net basis. Zoom in here to this right now. We've seen this move, and I took this snapshot this morning. We've come down to the bottom of this local range we've had here. Basically been chopping for about 5 days, but I have a resistance level up to about 120. And I can't say that if we break over 120 that we're going to go straight to 140. The structure that we have here below, we call it corrective, and it's not the type of reversal that we would expect if this is going to break out. It can break nominally over 120 and remain corrective in structure and likely still come down lower. And we do basically a measured move in Elliott wave in this context. We have a corrective move, and so as long as it holds 120, I see the next move taking us down into the 90s. So that's where we're at. And again, I'm walking this market down. I haven't even looked past. Again, we have 74,500 down this big blue box, way down at the bottom. And I haven't even gone that far in terms of watching this top develop. But as we get down into this level, there will be another sort of B show up about here, probably around 112. And if that is maintained, then that's when we'll see the 74,500 break. Again, watching for surprises here. This can turn into, we call a diagonal. So a corrective move cannot turn into an impulse, but a corrective move like this can turn into a diagonal, and we call that five. We need to be 5 waves, not 3 waves like a B wave, and we would see a wave 2 pop. So we get a higher low somewhere around 114 after a move to 120K with 5 waves. Then that would have a setup for 140. But again, I don't foresee that at this point in time. It could show up again here down in this A in the 90s possibly, but if it doesn't show up there, we're pretty much done. Context to this, and I'm going to go to some longer term charts later because I always do. So what if I'm wrong about this large scale bear market? But context wise, there's a couple scenarios for this bear market. One is that the worst case, and actually my preferred case looking at the long term chart, is that we can we can drop as low as 3,000, but I would expect it to hit 10,000. It would not be right away. It would not be next year. It would probably be over a couple of years. This would be one of the largest bear markets that Bitcoin has experienced since. At the same time, it could have an immense rally in the middle of what we call a B wave that actually breaks to a new all-time high, even breaks to 200,000 is possible given the scale that we're talking about. But when I say bear market, I'm largely talking about going sideways for quite a few years, and I'll show that on the chart. So that's just a prelude to that. So actually, we'll get into it pretty quickly here. So what if I'm wrong? So if I'm wrong, Bitcoin will set up for a run. In the short term, if I'm wrong, Bitcoin will set up for a run to 140, a run over 125K to 140. And I talked about the context where I see that happening to trying to get ahead of it. One would be from here, we break over 120K in 5 waves and then hold a higher low. The other would be that it'd probably show in the 90K region, at least that's where I expect it, possibly as low as say 75, 80, but I would expect it more likely to show in the 90K region. If I'm wrong with respect to the monthly chart, okay, we'll break over 195K. We don't even have a setup for that right now. It's in price structure. So when I presented this in the last, I was like, well, if we just kept zooming straight up, we didn't look like we were going to then either, but if we just kept pushing straight up into 195K, well, then I would at least know I'm wrong quite quickly. But right now, the opposite has happened. So it seems that I'm quite right now, but we'll see how it goes. And I would still expect a bearish cycle north of 200K. So even if we broke over 195, but I would be very wrong about this large scale bear market, which I've talked about for many years. Okay, the bear cycle to come, if I'm wrong, will be more tame, likely a shorter duration. I'll show you what that looks like, okay, in the chart coming up. Okay, it'll be more likely to drop to 30 to 50K instead of potential 10K or even 3K. Okay, so I think we've got the chart next. I do. Okay, so this is the monthly chart. It's a different tone. I use different software because my MotiveWave software doesn't have all the long-term data in there anymore. They deleted it. Thanks to them, sarcastically. But I'm looking at this. So when we top in this level, it's what we call primary fourth. I still see great moves in Bitcoin to come. So if you're younger and you get a chance to collect Bitcoin through this bear market, you will probably do very well. I don't know how long whoops. I don't know if I'll ever personally see 10 million Bitcoin or at least 3 million Bitcoin, but I do plan to accumulate, at least for my kids, through this bear market cycle. And the A wave, I would expect to be around 10K. Okay, there is outsized potential for these moves to reach 3K, which is the 2018 low. There's a tendency for the larger degree wave fours to get very close to the previous degree wave four, which is circle four. I would be surprised by it hitting 3K, but I have to say it's possible. And the other thing I would say is I don't know what shape this will come. We can see the A be quite shallow, B be high over the all-time high, like I spoke about earlier, around 225K. Actually, I'm labeling it around 300. So that wouldn't be too outsized either when I look at it proportionally. But that's going to be a trap as the years to come would be down. I would expect everyone to speak about millions when we get to 225 or 300 because it'd be the natural next round number. But if it happened in this context to a large bear market, I would be a big trap. It would be a big trap. And then if I'm wrong, and I can be wrong about the scale of this bear market, and that's because of some of the confusion in the long-term data of Bitcoin. There's a lot of reasons why I've talked about how difficult it is with Bitcoin. Largely, that's that lack of central quote. It originally traded on bulletin boards between peers, not on open exchanges, on and on. And that really taints the data. But if I'm wrong here and now about this being a large-scale bear market, as I said earlier, this wave two could hold 30 to 50K, and that can precede this movement into the millions. So naturally, as subscribers in our service, I'm as an analyst there, I'm going to be watching that region to see if we have the type of bear market, I would say sentiment, like intense bearishness, bad news like we saw in 2023 with the collapse of banks or exchanges or whatever. I would look for things like that. And then I would also look for price structure, which is what you typically see with reversals, which I won't break open. It's kind of something you have to see in progress, but it's something I'll be watching for in there as well. So there's again two contexts where I'd be wrong. One, if we break over 200K straight directly from here, again looks unlikely right now. Things can change. And the second is that we hold into a reversal pattern somewhere between 30K and 50K. All right. So we have a lot of sentiment warnings. I've seen less of the wild price projections by end of year, quote unquote. Everyone says that, right? But I certainly have heard them. I mean, I have heard everything from 200 to 1 million. I've also heard talk like this, the 4-year cycle that Bitcoin certainly goes through, or classically, historically has gone through, which is based on its mining cycles and its halvings, which you can look up if you have time, doesn't apply this time. Okay, and I've looked for those cycles to start to end. Incidentally, if I understand the timing, I've done some research on this. That cycle, 4-year cycle, ends around October, so we're pretty close to that, right? So if you look at historic cycles, we would expect a top to form somewhere around October. Is September close enough? I would say so, possibly, right? And then you can hear stuff like cycles just beginning. Well, of course it didn't begin. We went 6x since 2023. How could it just be beginning? So that one's silly. But the big one is that these company treasuries and sovereign wealth funds, as I said earlier, are gonna power Bitcoin prices to the moon. Again, as if continual flow of money is going to come from these companies. And that's the one I challenge. And even more so, I've stated that I think my theory, again, we'll see. I don't really trade on theories. I trade on price structure. But I think that it's actually institutions that will drive this next bear market. As I said earlier, the newest Bitcoin treasury companies are the ones with the poor cash flow, poor operations, bad product line. You can go on and on. I actually come from a product strategy background before I became a full-time trader. So I have something to say about it. So a little bit laughable for some of these companies. Many of these companies bought Bitcoin based on its long-term CAGR while ignoring its normal volatility. So they're taking out debt or they're issuing shares as if Bitcoin never goes down. Okay, we know that to be false, and we know it goes down quite fast and faster than the stock market in its normal behavior. Some of these companies may not be able to hang on to the Bitcoin through the volatility, debt to cash flow ratio if they're taking out debt, and then if they have any operating expenses left in these zombie companies. And I don't want to call out companies per se, but I would just say if you have been investing in these companies, track how they're buying the Bitcoin, tracking whether they're diluting you, track their ongoing operations, track those financial sheets. A lot of us don't do that well enough or diligently enough if we swear to fundamentals. So I'm actually more of a technical trader, but I still if I want to hold something long term, I still take a peek. I still track it. If I'm taking a swing trade, I care a little bit less. So there's some of these companies, the risk is some of these companies can't hodl or hold on to that Bitcoin, especially if they go through a feedback loop. We go through a feedback loop in a bear market. So that's a real risk. And so I would say, all of this Bitcoin buying become that supply, which powers the bear market as it moves into that feedback loop stage that bear markets go into. So I'll give you it's sort of the anti-narrative coming from me. And I thought this was interesting. This was really interesting. And I knew this was kind of happening, but I hadn't seen it in a graphic. But we're using this term now, MNAV, which is sort of the net NAV, net asset value of the holdings of these treasury companies. I don't know what M actually stands for. I haven't figured it out, but they're using this term now, MNAV. And what's happening is ratio of market cap. Yeah, I think I'm saying it wrong, but ratio of the market cap to value of the crypto in the balance sheet. And what's interesting is we're starting to see a lot of these companies drop below the MNAV levels, meaning the stocks are starting to drop, and it's almost like investors are ignoring the actual crypto and the value of that crypto on the balance sheet. So like the latest one, and I'm not trying to call out the company, but SharpLink Gaming is, I think it's roughly about 20% below the crypto that's on its balance sheet. And actually they're have a low debt position. I don't think they have a lot of operational value per se, but they have a very low debt ratio. But the company, even despite that low debt ratio, is starting to trade below market value. Now, either that's a great arbitrage opportunity, or or the market is just not believing the story, or the market is starting to believe that there is a bear market coming and that Ether is going to be devalued. I don't think of markets itself and its price mechanism being so prescient, to be honest. But it may simply be as much as there were just too many buyers and they're all in. I don't know. A lot of reasons for this, but I do. The one reason this is a big warning is because a lot of these companies are diluting shares to buy that crypto. And if their price is going below, it's simply poor capital management to further dilute to buy more Ether. In fact, in some of these situations, we better to sell Ether and buy those shares back while they're at a bargain. I mean, if they're truly in this long-term game, or the other approach for them strategically is if they want to buy more Ether, since diluting is so bad, they're going to have to go to the debt markets and in-debt themselves to maintain the strategy. So in my view, it's less about whether the market is expecting a bear market or not, but this is basically kind of decapitating the strategy altogether by this drop in share price, unless these share prices quickly reverse and turn towards the moon. So quite dangerous if you ask me. Anyway, all right. My taxes, again, I kind of shared. I've reduced overall exposure to crypto space. I'm removing most of my exposure to altcoins. I have a few key ones. Solana is still behaving strong. We'll see some altcoins continue on higher after Bitcoin tops. But eventually, I call it the Bitcoin vortex. When Bitcoin it really solidifies a bear market, it'll sort of bring everything with it. That's kind of how the market's worked. There's some variations in that. I'm seeing more variation, and I'm seeing less co-correlation across the assets. I think the market is maturing, so there may be bull strategies to be had during a Bitcoin bull market, and we'll see how that goes. I got my never sell Bitcoin I talked about. I'm not doing anything with that. It's just easier security wise to not move it. I've orientated my swing tradings to trading long and short, so I'm doing both. I thankfully Coinbase added more futures to the crypto space in the US, so I have the opportunity to do that under regulations, so that's great. And then Bitcoin bears are also great opportunities to accumulate Bitcoin on the cheap. Another strategy I have is every time Bitcoin closes with a candle daily candle under 30 RSI, I actually do buy it because historically that has produced 10 to 15% return in a quick, I don't want to call it scalp, but like very quick swing trade. So I will still take long trades within a bull market. One day it may not work, but it has worked for many years to use that strategy. So that's where I'm at from a tactical standpoint. I will take Q&A now. That is the all I have to present. Looks like I barely made it. I'll head back to the QR codes so that you can, if you haven't had a chance to grab those, you can
Thank you,
grab
Ryan. Yeah, we have a
grab
couple
those.
of, we can go a couple minutes over. There is a couple of
Yeah,
questions. The MNAV, it stands for Market Net Asset Value, just so you know. A
yeah,
metric used to value companies with significant Bitcoin holdings. They say MNAV of 1.0 means the market values the company's enterprise at the exact value of its Bitcoin holdings.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep, you're welcome. Great presentation with a lot of people in the room. A couple of quick questions. Chris is asking any correlation of BTC to ETH?
There is correlation. It's never been regular. Those price structures are completely different. I do believe that Ether will hit 6K before the top unless it breaks a certain level below. Like always, I have a level below, right? I can't remember what that is offhand. I don't have my chart in front of me. So its correlation is it's sort of like rhymes, but doesn't copy, if you will. I mean, I think there's a better way of saying that. That's the best way I can come up with it. There's some
Got it.
relation, but not completely.
And Jeff is saying, Ryan, if you feel BTC may have topped, do you also think alts like Solana have also topped? You did mention you're still holding Solana, but
Yeah, still
any
I
thought there?
Solana has been strong and I mean my first sport's 190, then I have another level below. Don't have the chart handy. It's actually my largest altcoin position. I do have a target of 400. Again, I will always change my mind if support start breaking, but right now it's holding up.
And through the year, like we're not going to hold you to timing it through year end, but would you be shocked for BTC to trade up near like that 140 level before the end of the calendar year?
I would not be shocked. I mean, I've learned not to be shocked by markets.
Good answer.
I mean, again, given, even context to all my great calls, I mean, I've got plenty wrong. So, I mean, a setup is there, a setup is there. What I will say is I wouldn't miss it. Meaning I would be on board at some level. I may not have the perfect entry, but if the setup is right, I will take it. And I will, offer that analysis to my subscribers. And they can do what they want with it. And so, yeah, it would be lovely. I would love to get a little bit more off Bitcoin before the bull market ends. It just doesn't look probable right now. Again, I was very wrong about Ether in the last, so I took a lot of my Ether off in 2024, and it was very close to the 2024 peak, and I just didn't like what it was doing. So I have not ridden, and I didn't choose to get it back on. I didn't really like the setup down at where it was at it was at like 2000 or something like that. I don't remember. And so a lot of my subscribers, being more ardent bulls for Ether, enjoyed this rally more than I do. Again, I never have regret with markets. The markets have treated me well. I can't trade everything perfectly. It's all good. So, I mean, again, don't be me wrong, but am I ever surprised by markets? No, never.
Great answer, and it's a great way to end this segment. We really appreciate great presentation, folks. You see the QR codes on the left is the free trial. On the right is a copy of the presentation. Please get with Ryan directly if you want to see those. Ryan, we appreciate you as always. Like you said, you've been here for 7 or 8 years. If folks you want to see any of his old presentations, go to moneyshow.com. Search his name, Will Day, under the expert section. You could see all the virtual events that he's participated with. He's been at live events too, but all the replays from the virtual shows are there. But we want to thank everybody for joining the session. Ryan, we appreciate you as always. And we want to wish everybody a good rest of your afternoon and evening and a good rest of your week. And we will see you at the next show, hopefully. Ryan,
All
thanks
right.
again, my friend.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day, everybody. Bye now.